having now about mentorship and all of that. And get that engine revved and then like stop it and get us going on track. But we really want to honor your time and our time together. But also we want to make maximum use of what God is doing in and through the life of Arthur Paul Boers. I first met, and I'll put that in quotations, Arthur Boers many years ago when I had some, you're not going to believe this, I had some people that I was dealing with in ministry that I thought were jerks. You guys have probably never had that, but I had that. And there was a book title called Never Call Them Jerks. And that was a helpful book, and that was one of Arthur's books. And then last year, I had this other book that I was assigned at Tyndale called Living into Focus, and it was other than the Bible, the most transformative book in my life that year. And when Arthur came and spoke to our class, I just thought, he's got a lot. God is doing a lot in his life and through his life that he can share with us. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what God says through you, Arthur. Welcome here, and we've got somebody doing some video here, and I kind of promised her that you were going to be between the table and the blue cord. So
having a Damascus road.
So should we just shift this around so you can see it?
Okay, sure.
How's that?
That's great. All right, so I'm just going to run these slides. These are slides from the walk on the Camino de Santiago that I did in the year 2005. So I'm going to run them without commentary, so you can just see them as they go, give you a little taste for the pilgrimage that I walked. And just one caution about the slides. You might see a number of pictures of a middle-aged woman with red hair, and you might think, what's with this guy's obsessed with this middle-aged woman with red hair? Just to assure you that that's my wife. It is true that I'm obsessed with her, but I think the obsession is appropriate. So this morning I want to reflect a little bit with you about some of the things that I learned on that walk, and discuss together with you what some implications might be of that for our lives here in North America. But let me just say up front that I'm really glad to be with you. I'm grateful for John's invitation. I enjoyed meeting him at Tyndale, and I actually grew up in a church called Maranatha, so I feel kind of at home on that front as well. I used to live in Waterloo. I pastored a church just outside of Waterloo in a town called Bloomingdale, a very small place. And I don't know what it is about Cambridge, but I always get lost when I come to Cambridge. I've been to Cambridge many times, but I always get lost. And today I got thrown by the Elgin thing. So that threw me. So my apologies for running a little bit late. So we'll just run these slides, and we'll have some time. I'll do a couple of presentations, and we'll have some time for conversation. So there's a very famous pilgrimage route in Spain called the Camino de Santiago. It means the way of St. James. Santiago is a Spanish way of saying St. James. It's a pilgrimage route that has been important for over 1,000 years. And in recent years, it's started to get popular again. And more people are walking it. You may have seen a film a couple of years ago called The Way, starring Martin Sheen and his son, Emilio Estevez. It was directed by his son, Emilio, as well. It's a film about walking on this route and gives you a feel for why this place is so attractive. In the 1970s, a few dozen people walked this route. I walked about 500 miles. That's the route that a lot of people choose. In the 1970s, a few dozen people walked it in the whole decade. In 1985, 2,400 people walked it. In 1995, 25,000 people walked it. And in 2005, when I walked it, there were 95,000 people who officially walked this route. And Spanish tourism officials are predicting that very soon 250,000 people per year will be walking this route. So there's an astonishing popularity. Imagine 250,000 people a year walking the Bruce Trail. The Bruce Trail is actually another route that I've walked, and is actually the same length as the Camino de Santiago. So let me tell you a story. One day I got up on the Camino, got up around 5:30. I like to get up early. I'm a Dutchman. Dutchmen are trained, or at least we used to be trained to get up really early. And it was also advantageous to get up early because it was really hot watching Spain. I was there in the month of June, and often the heat got well over 40 degrees centigrade. So I would get up early and I'd walk. So I got up at 5:30. I walked to a town that I knew had a good hostel, and I checked in at the hostel, and I cleaned myself up. I had a shower, and I washed my clothes in the sink in the bathroom and put on my other clothes. You're carrying all your stuff, so you go as lightly as possible, and basically have 2 sets of clothes. So I put on my dry clothes and I hung out my wet clothes, and then I had an all-important nap, and then after my nap I went and walked around the town a little bit, and I came around a corner and I saw a young couple sitting at a cafe at a table, and they were having coffee together, and I didn't really know this couple. I knew that they were from Germany because I had seen them before. In fact, we had stayed in the same room the night before, and I should tell you a story about this. When I stayed in this room, there were about 10 of us in the room. That was a small hostel to stay in. Sometimes I stayed in hostels where there would be 100 or more people in bunk beds, 2 or 3 tiers high. But anyway, this was a fairly small hostel room. There were about 10 of us in the room. And when I went to bed that night, I climbed up on the top bunk, and as I lay there, I realized that the person below me was observing an old pilgrimage tradition. In medieval times, when people walked on the Camino de Santiago, they didn't bathe the whole time that they walked. And, in medieval times, you walked all the way from wherever you went, right? So you walked, you're going from Holland, you walked from Holland, or from Austria, or Switzerland, or Germany, or whatever. And as I was lying there, I realized that the guy below me was observing this tradition. So I was kind of frustrated. I was thinking, boy, it's really hard to sleep with this guy reeking. And why is he observing this old pilgrimage tradition? I realize it's an old tradition, but we have showers now and other people to think about. And so I was thinking all these thoughts. It was kind of hard to fall asleep as I was thinking about it. But I did eventually drift off to sleep. And then in the morning, when I got up, I picked up my backpack, and I realized that I'd been smelling my pack all night long. The pack that I was carrying in me. Sort of sounded like a parable from Jesus, don't you think? About the log and the beam, something like that. Anyway, so this couple had slept also in the same room. They're from Germany. That's all that I knew about them. And but I approached them. I said, "Can I sit down?" And they said, "Sure." And they invited me to sit down with them. And I found out that their names were Marcus and Susanna. They found out that my name was Arthur, that I lived at that time, I lived in Indiana. And that's all that they knew about me. But within 10 minutes, this guy told me, I don't know why, he told me he was not a Christian. In fact, most people who walk on the Camino don't call themselves Christians. He told me that he was not a Christian, but that he was bringing a Bible along. He was reading the Bible every day. He said he had lots of questions about the Bible. He was going into every church that was open. He was going to every service that was offered. And he said, "I'm really interested in the Bible. I wonder, do you know anything about this Sermon on the Mount that I'm reading?" And what he didn't know was that the Sermon on the Mount is one of my favorite parts of the Bible. It's central to my theology. And so we started to have a long conversation about Sermon on the Mount, about scriptures, about God, about faith. And the conversation went on, I kid you not, for hours. And then we took a break, we went to a little grocery store, and we bought supplies for supper. He insisted on cooking supper for us, and